the Political Free Agents Podcast, and it's our Sunday episode. Time for us to dig into what's actually been going on this week. And it's not like much really happened this week, just a little debate. A little debate happened, and you know, the Dodgers. I don't watch a ton of baseball, but I do like this world. I was about to say the Super Bowl because I got the game going on here as well. But I do like the World Series. Um, and I just saw everybody talking about the game and how big, a deal the game was and everything that was happening, in the game. And so I was watching complete sidebar, but I was watching a Borat movie, and then I saw the ending uh, of what happened, and I was like, "Oh wow, yeah, this was a pretty interesting game." But I have a friend who's shout out to Pete, big time Dodgers fan, and so I just thought they had it in the bag, but it turned out to be something else. So I won't spoil. Well, I guess I kind of spoiled it, but I won't spoil how it actually happened. But that was quite interesting. Uh, and I mean, I couldn't wear a Texans hat today because Green Bay is lighting them up. This is bad. It's not looking good for us Texans. But we'll see. Looks like we're gonna get a good draft pick this year. But it is what it is. All right, so we're gonna kind of go through my thoughts on the debate, how everything went. We have 9 days left, right? So in these last 9 days, little things can have big impacts. And in the larger scheme of things, I believe, and we generally believe, Mike and Chris, by the way, it's just a tough tough season for them right now, in terms of scheduling time for the podcast. So they'll be coming back in as soon as they can. But uh, we basically believe there's not many independent voters left, and if you are one, I'd like to hear from you. Or sorry, not independent, undecided voters. It's very likely that you made your decision already on who you're going to vote for, which is understandable. That's fine. But what we're looking at right here is actually a pretty large turnout in terms of just like strictly on the strength of voter turnout. And I'm going to pull up some numbers here real quick to go through them. But I found a pretty good source of data on Twitter. And so the site actually, let me actually show this. So if you're watching on video, this will make a lot more sense than if you're just watching or just listening. But that's all right. I'll explain it as much as I can here. All right, sorry, just trying to find the right Zoom window here. Zoom changed the way sharing kind of works. All right, so what we're looking at here, this site is listed on github.io. GitHub is a source code repository site, and they also allow you to do like some static web page publishing as well. So this is a pretty cool site that they put together. What they're doing is kind of summarizing the statistics of what's happening throughout the country in terms of like early voting and things like that. So I'm not going to go state by state, but you can kind of see here the current total early votes are 58 million. Mail-in ballots are 39, and in-person is 19. So mail-in obviously is 20,000 more than is in person right now, which I don't know. Maybe that's kind of an expected number in terms of mail in versus in person at this point. But it also says the turnout as a percent of 2016 total turnout. Currently, This, I believe, was updated this weekend, 25th, October the 25th. So today. So this has been, wait, is the date the 25th? Yes, today's the 25th. So this has been, it's 42.7% of the total votes that were counted in 2016. So we're 9 days out, and we almost have almost 43% of the total turnout of 2016. That's kind of interesting. I'd also list the mail ballots that were requested. You know, that's interesting to you. It's there. So the mail ballots requested by party registration basically leans heavily to Democrats over Republicans. No party affiliation is 15 million. Republicans are 13 million and Democrats are 23 million. The total is 52. So what's interesting though is I was thinking about this when I was looking at these numbers, and the numbers kind of bear out to the point. I mean, well, the affiliations kind of bear out to the point of what you're deemed as by your voting record at one point in time, right? So I mentioned this a while back, and you know, but it's been quite a while. We've gotten grown, and a lot of new viewers, you know, are listening and watching now. But my first vote was Bush, W. Bush. That was my first time I was eligible to vote, and I didn't vote in primaries. I didn't even know what primaries were. But you know, Bush came out, voted, came up again, voted for Bush again. Obama one came out. I went to the primaries this time, and I voted in the primaries. So I go into the primaries and vote on the Democratic ticket. I didn't know that that was going to make me a registered Democrat. I was living in Arizona at the time. I had absolutely no idea. I never once went and said, hey, mark me down as a Democrat. But I found out in the 2012, because in 2012, I went to go vote in the Republican primary because I was interested in seeing what some of the candidates actually had going for them. And they told me, you can't vote. I was like, man, what are you talking about? I can't vote. They're like, no, you can't vote simply because you're a registered Democrat. And I'm like, I've never been a registered Democrat. And so when I look at these numbers, I think of it in that case of it, they may be pulling records that show, you know, this is who you are set up as, but it doesn't necessarily mean it. And I've just never gone to actually change it and actually remove myself from being labeled as one or the other. But I say that to say it's likely that these numbers are pretty accurate in terms of Dem or Republican. But I do understand that some people could be in my same position and not be either, but marked as one. So it also has this broken down by race and ethnicity, which is always funny to me. So we break it down by race, but we're also going to say ethnicity. And so that's how they end up doing the non-Hispanic, Hispanic sort of thing, which is just hilarious to me, but I won't go down that soapbox. And also these are the mail ballots requested by age. So the younger generation isn't requesting as much. That's only 8.1%, and 65 and up is 33%. And it's about 13 to 18 in between, you know, those age ranges there. So it's interesting just to kind of see data. If you like the data, it's there. The big part is the total voted by party registration. So far, the total voted. These are it's not all of the states. Well, I won't read them all, but it's a decent list of about 20 or so different states that are reporting here. And it's Democrats are 49%, Republicans 27%, minor 0.6, and no party affiliation 22. Can't say 100% that means Democrats have 50% of the vote right now and are winning by a landslide. You can't necessarily say that because there are Dems who are voting Republican. Again, some who are neither and are just labeled as such. And then you have some who are Republican who are voting Democrat. So you can't really say there. But it's interesting. They have the links to where they're getting the data from and things like that. So it's good information. There's also I'll mention this site here, or not site, but this uh, Twitter account. Let me actually get the right name. But it's UMich Voter 99, Mich as in Michigan, like University of Michigan Voter 99. So UMich Voter 99. But check them out. They have some pretty good posts. They're staying regular in terms of updating people on who's doing what. Right now, they say in Florida, or actually this was on the 23rd, they say that the numbers after the weekend could end up being completely different. But basically, 5.2 million votes were cast as of the 23rd. 2.2 million is 43% were Democrat, 1.8 were Republican, and NPA, no party affiliation, is 1 million. So 43%, 36, and 20%. The Democrat lead decreased by 388,000. And on the 23rd, they processed 504,000 ballots. So Florida actually is interesting. And I was listening to 538. Florida's, which is one of my favorite podcasts. They go into like the details of like their voter model, or excuse me, their polling model and how they do their predictions and things like that. And so I was listening to them, and they were mentioning that the models. So 2016, the models or the polls had a 3% margin of error. That plus the last minute things that happened with Comey and the FBI shifted, things a little bit, and stuff like that. So they say in this year it's possible. Right now, Biden's about 10 to 12 point lead, depending on which ones you're paying attention to. You could still have a 3-ish% margin of error with the polls. But also one thing they brought up that I completely forgot. This is one of the first elections that felons are being able to vote again in Florida. If you recall, we did an episode, I believe it was maybe last year, where we were talking about the details of how Florida was basically like, not only did you do your time, but now you had to go in front of a committee that had pretty much no rules, and they basically just arbitrarily said yay or nay on whether or not you could vote again. Like you think like not in America. It's a right. You have a no. Like this is happening. This was happening in America, and they were doing this completely arbitrary process to determine if you could vote or not. It was ridiculous, just flat out. And so a lot of that, I'm not going to say all of it because I forget the actual specifics of what it changed, but there was a good number of felons who were actually now eligible to vote. And so that changes things in a way that we just like we don't know, right? So you can think of it as like this entire new population in Florida that hasn't been counted, and we don't know how they're going to vote, right? So there's all these sorts of margins of potential error or change that could be happening. So when I look at the Florida numbers, it's interesting. It's just right now just data points, right? Don't take it as, oh my God, the Democrats are blowing them out the water, and don't take it as the Republicans are climbing because the lead decreased. Like these things are going to ebb and flow for the next 9 days, and we won't know until next Tuesday. So the election is coming to a close. So this is going to be interesting. So 4 years ago, election night, I went live on Facebook just because I was like, oh, this is interesting. I was having to type a lot. People were asking a lot of questions. I was like, I might as well just go live. So I went live. Uh, we may end up doing that on election night this year. Um, but it's so the simple prediction is somebody's going to be very angry. Somebody's going to be very happy. And there's going to be a lot of gloating. I don't care who wins. The gloating is going to be probably the worst you've ever seen in a presidential election. It's just going to happen. Just think about it. If Trump loses, they're just going to be all over him with "you're fired" and all these other things, right? It's going to happen. It's inevitable. And if Trump wins, oh, it's just going to be MAGA everywhere. Snowflake this, snowflake that. Like heads are going to explode on both sides, no matter who wins and who loses. It's inevitable. So for me, I just sit back and I'm just like, well, let's just watch the show, right? Like I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing for me and my family, regardless of who's in office. And I'm just here to watch the show on the rest. So it'll be interesting to see because now I'll tell you, my hope is Trump loses. And the reason why is he's a terrible president. And the reason why he's a terrible president is he cannot govern in times that are not good, right? Like, yeah, you came in, you take over, you have an economy that's on the rise. It's at that point, I guess it was a 8-year bull run that we were on. So, or no, I guess it's 6 years, 6 or 7 year bull run that we were on at the time that he took over. So when he takes over, it's a bull run. We're like everything's going up. Now, if you listen to the show, I suggest you go back. That everything was built on pixie sticks. It was inevitable that it was going to fall. The economy was going to crash, no matter what happened. It was COVID. Could have been any number of things. It was going to happen. There were all these leading, pretty much every indicator was leading to a recession. It was going to happen. They kept pumping in money and they, reducing the interest rate. And you don't reduce the interest rate in a healthy economy. All of these indicators were coming, right? COVID hit, things crash, and we've seen that he cannot govern for all of America in a crisis. I don't think, unless you are just hyper partisan, I don't see how you could say he can govern in this time. I don't take responsibility, and then, oh, it's the governor's fault. And, oh, we need to go in and do, let's go get this shot of the church and, clear out the masses. So, like I can take this picture, like all these sort of things that he's doing, like he's just not a good president. He's just not. And I'm not even digging into the handling of COVID and things like that. Like he's just not the guy, right? He's not. Doesn't mean that there's not a Republican out there that can't. I don't have a problem with the Republican president. This guy just isn't the right one, right? So I hope he does lose. But if he doesn't, it's going to be glorious, to watch another 4 years and to see what actually is happening whenever all of this continues to hit the fan. It's going to be a rough go. Whoever the president is, there's obviously going to be an increase in the economy because, well, what? Markets go up, down, and sideways. It's inevitable. There's going to be an increase of some sort at some point. Like it's going to happen. It's not going to stay down forever. It didn't destroy our economy. It hurt it. But we're starting to find new ways to actually take care of business and different ways to operate as a country. So anyway, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how all of this this flows. But there are consequences to an election. Without a shadow of a doubt, there are consequences. So the election, as it comes to a close, I say all that to say, just recognize that um, no matter who is the president, come the next day, your job is still going to be there. Hopefully, your family's still going to be there. Your friends will still be there, right? I don't cut anybody off based on who they voted for. Um, you know, family and relationships are way more important than voting record to me. We can argue all day about the politics of it, but that's just my take. But just know that you still have to set yourself up for success, because you have no idea how these presidents are going to govern. You just don't know. There's always talk of what they're going to do, and then the reality hits, and some things change in that sense. So the biggest thing that I caught out of the debates, as we kind of segue into that, was about industry and career. And I won't go point by point like we did with the VP one, but I kind of go through, because I started to post some things on Facebook as I was going through, just to kind of chronicle my thoughts on the show. I mean, on the debate, or Facebook and Twitter. So one thing, let's get this part out the way. After the first debate, came on here and we talked about Chris Matthews and how there's really no way to do a good job at these things. There's not. I take it back. Kristen Welker did a phenomenal job in this debate as moderator. I mean, to the point where Trump complimented her live and was like, "I like the way you're doing this." Like, she killed it. I was like, "Oh snap!" Like, I was like waiting to see, are the wheels gonna fall off this thing, or is she gonna hold this together? She held it together. I couldn't believe it, and it wasn't a shock of me not, believing that she could do that. I thought she could, but is what it is. I missed on that one. It was interesting. So anyway, the reason why she did so good was because she was basically the rules had changed, and they basically were like muting microphones. And so the impetus to interrupt was basically removed during like the first 2-minute segment. Like, it was like question, 2-minute segment, answers, and then you could kind of back and forth, and the mics were a little more open. There were a few times I caught, there was one time Trump was talking and they cut his mic a little too early. I think he may have went over 2 minutes or something, and they cut him, but you could still hear him because, I mean, there's still microphones. Kristen's mic is on, Biden's mic had turned back on. So you could catch it, but it was a little faint, and it was maybe a few words. I forget which one specifically. But it was really well handled. I think the format, the structure, was spot on. I think they did a great job. So that part was good, and I thought it became a more of a like a substantive debate. Right? Let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about what's going on and how we actually address these things. Right? So, not going to go through and fact check. We'll talk about a couple lies, but obviously there were lies that were stated. Trump was all over the place with them, and Biden stepped his foot in one that was just like a complete own goal. It's like, dude, Like as soon as he said it, anyway, I'm jumping ahead of myself. We'll get there. Trump says he never took any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, I don't know how far back he's talking, but we have on record Don Jr. stating in '08 that this is an actual quote. Russians make up a pretty disproportionate cross section of a lot of our assets. We see a lot of money pouring in from Russia. A disproportionate cross section of a lot of our assets. Do you really think that just went away? Like, this is why the whole conversation about Trump's taxes is important. This is why we need to see Trump's taxes, because we have these things on record, knowing that he's beholden financially to other countries. Not saying that all of his decisions are based on that or anything of that sort, but we don't know, right? He's taken, or not necessarily taken, he's making over $1 million a year from Turkey. Okay, so that sheds a different light on how he's handled things with Erdogan over there, or Erdogan over there, and the way he's kind of soft pedaled some things, right? So those things matter. But for him to come out and say, you know, I never got any money, and that was his exact quote, I never got any money from Russia. You know, again, context, he may be thinking, I've never gotten money from Russia as president or as a candidate. I don't know. But on the face of it, it was like, dude, we know that one's a lie. And I still can't believe he went in talking about how great he's been to farmers, how he made China pay for our farmers, for hurting them so badly. And I was just like, dude, you've been president for 4 years. Either you are outright willfully lying to the American people and they're believing you because they don't understand it either, or you are still oblivious to what a tariff is, right? So actually, you know what? Let's just pull up the definition real quick. And by definition, a tariff is a tax or duty to be paid on a particular class of imports or exports. It is a tax. You applied a tax. Now, the point of the tariff is that what you're doing is making it more expensive for, in this particular case, a product coming from China than a product that is here in America, right? So let's say company A, or let's say US company makes a widget, costs $10. China company makes a widget, costs, let's say, $6. With all the shipping and everything, let's say it comes out to $8, right? Just random numbers here. So the American companies that are looking to make money, they say, oh, we can save basically $2 or 20%. We can save that by getting this part from China. It's just as good. The quality is there. This makes sense. Let's go ahead and get this product from China. So then the US president, and I say that because the last three have tried this and failed. The US president says, we're going to put a tax on that thing from China, and we're going to make that widget now $11 from China. So now what is the US company looking to buy that product do? They say, oh, well, it's going to cost us more to get it from China. So let's get it from America, right? That's the that's the theory of why they keep trying this, because it will make people buy American products. That's the theory. The problem is it's not always going to be that way, especially when it comes to certain products that are specialized. So it's not going to just be a boon to that economy that you're looking for, those sort of things. What this is going to do is create an artificial look of saving jobs. Obama did this with tires, save 1,500 jobs. Awesome. Save 1,500 jobs. Great. It cost, I forget the exact number, but it was, I don't know, 30, 60,000 people um, across the country or in that state or whatever it was. It cost them like 1,500 bucks or something like that extra because the tariff basically meant the price of the tires went up. So everybody else ended up having to pay that cost, and you can't. It's not realized right then. You don't realize it immediately, right? And so with Trump, he did all this stuff to try to save the farmers. All right, so the product comes into the United States. They're still bringing in Chinese imports. Those things are getting taxed. Who do you think's paying that tax? The company that's doing the importing, right? So the company that's doing the importing used to be able to sell it at 10 bucks. They haven't shifted to a local company to cover. They're still using the Chinese imports. Maybe they have a contract with them, whatever the case may be. So now that thing costs 11 bucks. Well, now you just cut into their profit, right? They've lost, let's say, 10% of their profit because of these tariffs. What do you think US company is going to do? They're just going to pass that cost off to the consumer. That's business, right? You take the cost of your goods, you have your markup that is going to be your profit, and you're good. If your costs go up, so does your price. That's just business. So for him to continuously state this, that I hit them so hard, I did this great, wonderful thing against China, and I saved our farmers. All the while, farmers are hitting record bankruptcies. Like this is proven. You can feel free, look up the information. Record bankruptcies since all of this started uh, going this direction with the tariffs and everything that Trump has been doing. And also, smaller farms are being, and this is not necessarily specific to the tariffs, but for smaller farms are having to sell out to bigger farms because they just can't compete, right? There's bigger problems than big bad China when it comes to our farmers. Not an expert in the field. I've talked to local farmers, friends, things of that sort to kind of get a little more perspective of what's going on. But just go out and look at the data, man. The data's there, and him peddling that one is, I don't know why it gets under my skin. The tariff one gets under my skin, and I think because it's just so easily disproven, and yet he keeps saying it, and they just won't. Like Biden missed on even just hammering him on that point. Like he should have just taken a task on that. So, and overall, I think Biden missed on a lot of points. And debates aren't easy. Like you get into these debates and you're talking and you're trying to think and talk and prepare and answer these questions. I get it. You don't always remember stuff. You probably leave it and you're like, oh snap, I forgot. I should have hit him with this one. All right, so Trump mentioned, or minimum wage came up. It was one of the discussions. And Trump mentioned that it should be a state option. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I think federally, I think it should raise up some just overall. But I do agree that things in one part, and I think as I typed this out, I think Trump came back and said something to this effect after I had posted. But somebody from, like, let's say our hometown, my hometown, me and Chris, where we grew up, 2,500 people, 2,700 people. The minimum needed to live there is not the same as here in Houston. It's not even close, right? Like my rent here alone is more than some family members' bills back home. It's not a brag or anything like that. It's just showing that here, this area is way more expensive to live in than an area that is a smaller town. That's just normal. That's what you would expect. I haven't seen one city that costs the same amount to live in as a small town. I just haven't. But having lived in both, I recognize the difference between what I needed when I lived in the small town as opposed to what I needed when I lived in cities. And so the city life is just more expensive. Getting around, it's a bigger area to drive in, it's more congested. You also have more distractions around you in terms of like places to eat out, stuff like that. Our hometown, if you want to get something outside of uh, three burger joints, a Subway, and some Mexican restaurants, you need to travel like 30 minutes. If you want to go to a Walmart, you travel 30 minutes, right? Like those things, you tend to, the prices tend to reflect the area as well. And so the HEB can't charge, $250 for a brisket. That brisket's just going to sit on the shelves forever. And it's not that no one there has money, because there are people there that have money, and you can live well on a 60, 70, $80,000 salary there, where if you move to a city like Houston, you'll live moderately. Now, you take, let's say, $120,000 salary in Houston and you live quality. Take that 120 to San Francisco, and you just like barely getting by. And having done so much work in the Bay Area for the last 2 years, traveling there, talking to friends that are there, it's just been very interesting to see how wildly expensive things in California are. And I've talked about them before, but I had a client in town this week. We went out to dinner with him Thursday night up in the Woodlands here in Houston. And we were just talking. It was just funny to see, like, one of the first things he noticed was gas was $1.76 in Houston. It's like three something in California. He lives in LA. And so, just those sort of things, it makes a difference, right? Like if your gas is 2x more than what it is now, $40 fills up my tank, or a little less, really. But you get, yeah, I guess about 30 something dollars. I don't know. I don't always get to empty. So I'm trying to think. Anyway, it's irrelevant. 40-ish dollars, let's say, fill up your tank here. Well, if you have to fill up your tank once a week, then $160. If you have to fill up your tank once a week in California, and it's double, or wherever, and it's double the amount, now that 160 turned to 320. Oh, now that's eating into budget a little bit. And that's just gas, right? Now imagine your rent's gone up. If you want to get the same size house and everything, it's going to be extraordinarily more expensive, right? So I'm not one to say, I used to say we need $15 an hour across the board. I don't think so. I pay everybody on my team more than 15 just because I want to. But I don't think 15 should be the minimum across the board, because that's not realistic to every single geographic location. But people will disagree on that. But I'm okay with the federal rate going up. I think it's like $7.25 now, or $7.50, something like that. I'd be okay seeing that go to 9 or 10. I'd be okay with that. Not sure about 15 though. So as we got in, it kind of got a little testy. They got to talking about the kids in cages and all this sort of thing. And Biden kind of started hitting into the points of, these kids being separated from their parents. And I just felt overall Biden was a little off his game. Even when talking about this, Trump hit him with this one line, because, of course, Biden's hitting up kids in cages. And so Trump is all in the mic. Who built the cages, Joe? Who built the cages, Joe? I'm rolling because Joe Biden, it stopped him and stunned him in his tracks because he's like, I would, uh, well, I can't answer that. What's he gonna say? We built the cages. Like now that just kind of will sweep away your whole point of, altruism about protecting these kids and things like that. And so I just thought that was funny. I thought it was hilarious. He went on to try to explain, uh, but he failed to accurately do so. He's not a good orator. Like he doesn't present, like he doesn't counter well and things like that. Which, to be honest, I could care less how well of a speaker the president is, in the general sense. Like I just don't want somebody to sound dumb, right? But if you can't, like, speaker in the sense of like a debate, um, but if you can't debate well, I'm not going to hold it against you per se, but I recognize that when people watch these debates, they're looking for zingers, they're looking for big moments and things like that. And I thought this was one of Trump's best zingers. Who built the cages, Joe? Joe Biden was like, just kind of slid out the way. Like, I'm not going to touch that one. But the point he should have made was simply that he kind of got around to, but it was only after Trump kind of brought it up, was about catch and release. And the catch and release part is the big difference. So Trump was saying catch and release was a bad thing because you got murderers, you got rapists, and he went down his general normal list of classifying Mexicans coming here illegally, uh, and he went and touched on that, and then he said what they would do was they would take them and then they would let them go, and then they would come back and basically typical fear mongering sort of thing of they come back and then they're wreaking havoc sort of thing. Biden basically stated, and he missed this part, was that yes, we would catch and release, they'd have a date to come back for court and this sort of thing. And the part that he missed was the cages were always temporary because of catch and release. See, that's the difference, and that's the key that he didn't mention. It wasn't kids being locked up for months and being separated from parents like that. Like I think he kept bringing up 524 or 542 or something like that. 542 kids or something that have been separated and have no idea where their parents are. So he just kind of missed, and so Trump kind of got him on that point. And then the whole part about the criminal justice. So the question came up, and it's laughable that Trump continues to state that he's done more for Black people since Abraham Lincoln. I mean, we have the Voting Rights Act. We have desegregation, and like, I mean, we can go down a list of people, and there's a Twitter thread that kind of went down the list, and it obviously they went left, and they were talking about all these random people like what's his name, since it's Sunday, talking about football. The lady from Blindside talking about she's done more than Trump for Black people. Anyway, there's a whole bunch. It was a funny thread. They're talking about movies and all this sort of stuff. So, but you got the MLKs, the Malcolm X's, and Bayard Rustins, and all these cats. That it's like, dude, you can't really, truly, and honestly think you've done more for Black people. Like you just can't. And the part that I just been waiting on Biden to just like hammer home was Trump started talking about how he's done he did the First Step Act and rolled back issues that you created, Joe, with your crime bill, the 94 crime bill. which is really funny to me though, that the last election, that was Clinton's crime bill. This election is Joe's. And I'm wondering who's going to be the next owner of the crime bill in the next election. But, good line by Trump. Basically, Joe, you own the crime bill. I fixed that, sort of thing. And then he asked, why didn't you try? And Biden, it took him a minute to get around to it, but Biden finally corrected him uh, and on the First Step Act. And he said that they did try. Or Biden said that they didn't try. And then Biden said that it started under Obama, but he, he didn't dig into it. Like this is the thing, like, that I've been trying to, like, when you answer, they're looking for the sound bites. And so out of the box, your answer has to include the proper amount of information, not to overwhelm people with it, but to give them the outright clarity that whatever somebody just said was wrong, or here's my position. And so he didn't give the specifics. And it's like, dude, dig in, right? So we said this before, but the First Step Act was not some big glorious thing that Trump brought about. It's not. Trump never went about for criminal justice. Go back to the 2016. You show me where he talked about reversing anything with criminal justice. This was already something that had been brought about. I think it was Chuck Grassley, I think, who initially presented it. And this was presented in 2015. So it had been worked on 2013, 2014, something like that. It was initially in 2015. They had pushed for this thing to go through. And Biden's response, and part of it on why they didn't do certain things, was, we had a Republican Congress. And he just sat there. And it was like birds chirping. And it was like, dude, explain that to people. Not everybody gets that. Not everybody understands what you're trying to say. Like, give some detail into that. And it's like, dude, you're just missing these points. And so on this First Step Act, it's like, all right, dude, clarify for people that the First Step Act started in 2015. You were there. State it, say it, get it out there. Tell them this started in 2015 and the Republican Congress refused to pass it. Get that out there. Then as soon as Trump gets into office, well, not as, I guess it was as soon as, because I think they started 2017. I think it ended up being signed in 2018, but they started refining, going through things, and they got it done in 2018. Now, granted, he could have chosen not to sign it. So props on at least signing the thing. But this was not one of your ventures. You didn't start this. You didn't want it. Like, you just did it because it came to you and it was politically expedient. Maybe you did it because you really wanted to, or maybe it was politically expedient, right? I'm going with the latter because we have seen Trump take out full page ads for the Central Park Five and say, we need criminal justice. We need the death penalty brought back. And even when they were exonerated, he still said, I don't believe it. Many people still say that it was handled poorly. He applauded, and Biden brought this up in the debate, that Trump applauded the crime bill back in the day, right? Like, Trump has been on this train. He has not been a criminal justice reformer. And Biden, I think, has failed to make that point. But if anybody's looking at Trump, they know he's not a criminal justice reformer. Like, he just did. We brought it. I talked about, I think, last week, the statues. So if you vandalize a statue, you can get 10 years. That's not criminal justice reform. 10 years? You want to give somebody 10 years for damaging a statue? 10. That's not a criminal justice reformer. But Biden didn't seem to bring that up. So it's just like a point of mine that I was just noticing, is that they just miss on the framing, right? Like, it's, to me, it's like common sense things that they could really just hammer home, bring them up, and just put a pin in all of these little points that Trump's making, but they just fail to. Trump is definitely, in my opinion, way better at slinging stuff out there that is, maybe it's going to stick and maybe not. But Biden had me, Biden actually made me crack up laughing, because this dude said, he said, Abraham Lincoln over here. Oh my goodness. That one cracked me up. Cause he did the whole thing about being the best person for black people, or did the most for black people since Abraham Lincoln. And he said, even that may be arguable, whatever, dude. Uh, so the moderator asked them, basically, people of color are more likely to be by refineries and believe that refineries are killing them. This is my rough summation of what she was saying, because I wasn't going to rewind for the exact quote, but that's basically what she was saying. And then she said, why should they give you 4 more years? Talking to Trump. Literally Trump's answer, going through the whole thing, they make more money. They're making a lot of money. The family's making a lot of money. Like, and I'm waiting on him to like bring that thing back around. Like, come on, like, it's more than money, right? Like, your most precious asset is time. And I don't care what anybody tells you. You cannot get any more time. You can't earn anymore. You can't buy anymore, right? And the children, the wives, the brothers, the sisters, they would be much more happy to have the time with that loved one than the money. I mean, you could poll them. Now, unless the person is just a deplorable person, then maybe they want the money. But I would probably say a high percentage of people would rather have the person than the money, right? Nobody wants to struggle financially, but they'll take the person over the money. And all this dude talked about was the person. And this was another thing that I thought Biden should have hit home on, right? And the moderator mentioned it about Trump removing these regulations that are making it to where like these companies can pollute and that sort of thing. Like, that's a big issue, right? So when it comes to like the climate discussion and things like that, there is a place in California, I believe is called, let me look real quick, but they call it like Cancer Row or Cancer Alley. And so Cancer Alley is an area along the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And it's in the river parishes of, that's the river parishes in Louisiana. And it's called this because what these companies have done and the people that live along there, there's a high concentration of cancer, right? Like, cancer is not something that should have high concentrations in areas unless there's something causing it, right? And so these sort of things with Trump's, I'm going to delete regulations just because Obama put them in. He has enabled companies to continue to do these things, and they have failed to hammer that home in these highly televised public debates. Now, mind you, 7 million people less watch this debate, but who could shock them? I mean, who's shocked about that? Like, the first one was a disaster. Who would think this one would be better? All right, here's where I think Biden blew it. Trump pressed him and told him basically, or put it out there for him to say whether or not he was going to shut down the oil industry. And Biden's answer was yes. He stumbled, right? Go watch the clip. You can catch how he stumbled and kind of stammered a little bit. And Trump hammered him again, are you going to shut down the oil industry? And he basically said, yes. That right there may be a game changer. Now, I've heard everybody that I've talked to about it. They've said, well, the people um, who that would matter to have already made up their mind. So it's not going to be a big deal. There could be something to that, right? If you already, it's already kind of known. If you're in oil, you're probably voting Republican. It's highly likely that that's what you're voting. Uh, Democrats are pushing clean energy, renewables. Some of them are pushing no fracking, things like that, right? So it would be understandable if you're a Republican, or if you're in oil, you're voting Republican, right? So I get it. They probably already made up their mind. But the offshoot of that is somebody like myself who has a bunch of family and friends who are in oil. And I'm looking at Biden saying, well, I'm going to basically get rid of an industry. I have a deeper dive and deeper reasons into why I'm voting the way I'm voting. Uh, but I can understand there being some people, wives, kids, right? Friends, cousins, whatever. If there's somebody that's maybe they own a company, a trucking company or something like that, maybe they operate in this space or something like that, can impact some, not necessarily the direct person that's in oil, but it could impact some around them. And so I think that was probably the biggest mistake he made in the debate, or in any of the debates. And specifically, look at what he's been having to answer. Look at what he's had to say in Pennsylvania this week. He's been having to defend that, right? Instead of pointing out your, like, why you should vote for me and why you shouldn't vote for the other person, he's been having to point out how what he said is not exactly what was said. And so here's the thing, like I said earlier, with the debate, you're asked a question, especially if it comes from the other person you're debating. If your very first answer does not include a very clear stance, you're not going to get that point across, right? Especially in something like politics, right? If you're talking to an informed group of people and you're debating in front of them, yeah, the explanation can provide clarity. But in this case, for him to just say yes, it's like, oh, dude, like you should have put the clarity in the first answer and then come back around to that part, right? And so he clarified and stated that basically what he wants to do is get rid of the subsidies for oil. He wants to remove fracking from any federal lands. But the problem is he also came as a part, because this was all wrapped around the same. He also came out and he told Trump, he said that he guarantees that he did not say that he was going to ban fracking. He said, I have never said I oppose fracking. And Trump said, you said it on tape. Now I'm reading because we're running out of time here, so I'm reading the video as I'm playing it through. And he said, I didn't show the tape. And he said, put it on your website. Trump said, okay, I'll put it on the website. Before the debate was over, they had it's 5 or 6 clips spliced together with text Trump to 88022 at the top. I'm guessing that's probably going to urge you to give or something like that. And it's like, dude, it's 40 seconds of the clip after that first part of him in a debate in the primaries, talking to individual people, And all of it, he's saying that he's going to make sure it's eliminated, right? And of course, they're not going to clarify and put the details on there about the federal lands and stuff like that. So he can shout it from the rooftop all he wants. He can shout it from the rooftop, but they have him on tape saying that he was going to ban fracking all across America. If you're not digging into any specifics, you're catching sound bites. That's the sound bite. And if you're in the fracking industry, what do you think you're going to vote? You're going to vote against your own paycheck, your own self-interest? No, this is what people do, man. They're going to vote for the thing that is specific to them, right? It's single issue voters. The majority of people are single issue voters. It just is what it is. They are. You could be as anti-abortion as you want, but if the Republicans say they are going to get rid of your industry in like immediately, you're going to think twice about voting Republican. Now, you may not vote Democrat, but you're going to think twice about voting for that president that's going to destroy your finances in that way. So anyway, that was essentially the summation of the debates, or the debate. I think Trump walked away with that one, probably specifically because of the oil question and fracking. The lies don't really count. I've noticed that people are going to believe the lies no matter what. And they're going to keep saying them. They're going to keep repeating them because they sound good. It reinforces to them how they view things. And so they're going to continue to peddle those things. They're going to continue to go through and say, this is true and that is true and blah, blah. And they're just going to do that. So when it comes to a debate, they're not going to care about the fact check. They're not going to care. They're going to care about the sound bites. And the sound bites that came out of here were worse for Biden than I think they were for Trump. So will it matter is the key. Will it matter? I don't know. Trump saw a $26 million increase in giving. Trump's not a church. In donations. I think the day after or something like that. It was, anyway, however much it was a ludicrous amount of money that he raised after the debates. So maybe it did have an impact. I don't know. Don't know where the money really came from. If it was small donor, big donor, I hadn't dug into it. But all I know is we have 9 days left, and 9 days before the election was here, Biden decided to say that he was going to shut down or ban fracking and basically destroy the oil industry without providing the clear clarity that he's going to shift us to renewables and remove the subsidies, which I'm okay with removing the subsidies. But I think that was a mistake. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll see if it actually has some impact. I mean, I guess we'll never truly know if it has an impact because these things are so subjective. And there's all these different reasons why it could be there. But I highly suggest you go check out the 538 podcast. They dig into these things. If you're a nerd for data like me, dig into them. Check them out and check out everything that they're digging into because they really do go through the model and they provide a lot of clarity along those lines. So I'm going to give a shout out to a couple folks on, if you're on Instagram, go check them out. Each one of these words is separated by an underscore. So it's Bland the Man Fitness 85, Bland underscore the man, the underscore man underscore fitness underscore 85. I got to talk to him about all those underscores. Anyway, check him out. If you're in the Corpus Christi area, This is another John Bland. So this is my little cousin, great dude, but he's a personal trainer and he's actually offering promo codes. So I would suggest you go check it out. But he's really helping people kind of get their life together, their physical fitness, things like that. So he has a great fall special running, but definitely go check that out. Again, great dude. And I say another John Bland because there's 5 of us, uh, 5 John Blands. And so that's why I go by C and the second. Um, we all vary except for my grandpa, me, and my son. We're all the exact same. You know, I'm the second, my son's the third. Um, so anyway, longer story. won't dig into that. Um, but go check him out. Great guy. Really looking to help people along that front. Also, want to shout out. Is a little bit younger than me, but I went to school with his brother. And let me actually pull up his on here. But it's Chris Dooms. This is Barbell Armageddon. So on Instagram, look up Chris Dooms. If you like hitting the gym, check out barbellarmageddon.net. He also does some online coaching. He's also a bodybuilder. He's really reshaped his body, I've noticed. And he has a podcast called Barbell Mondays. You can check that out on Instagram as well at Barbell Mondays. And so go check it out. He has some pretty cool gear. I dig his swag. All his gears is kind of tight. His shirts is, stuff like that. His hats. And I just love the name Barbell Armageddon too. So go check them out. Support the folks. Give them a little love. Let them know you came from PFA, and spread out a little bit of this to folks looking to help make their lives better and make other people's lives better. Of course, we're the Political Free Agents. You can catch us at PFA Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, hit us up on YouTube. Hit like, hit subscribe. If you don't have the YouTube already, go to politicalfreeagents.com and you can see all the links to social media and to YouTube right there on the homepage. You can catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. And so Apple, Google, Amazon, Deezer, Spotify, we're all over the place. So spread it out, share it, let everybody else know, and we'll catch you on the flip. 100th episode is coming up. This is number 99. I think we're going to skip this week's episode and have the 100th episode be on election night or maybe the night after, but we'll determine that. But looking forward to the 100th episode.